Hey there, friends. Check out the Magdalene Mysteries, the left-hand path of the feminine Christ. So I really like this chapter about the goddess of Galilee. So it talks about losing the goddess, right? Beginning around 1100 BCE, archaeological evidence shows that Palestine became home to a new religious movement that rose up among the pastoralist tribes of the arid inland hills. This group of Canaanite priests worshipped Yahweh alone to the exclusion of all other gods. Over time, the patriarchal priests of Yahweh attracted a large following, eventually forming the Israelite priests of Yahweh. Religion that claims spiritual descent from the Old Testament patriarchs Abraham, Moses, and Jacob. However, in the early days of the movement, Yahweh had a wife, Asherah. Inscriptions found at the archaeological sites of Kuntilat Arjud in the northern Sinai, as well as the Kirbet el-Kum near Hebron, dating from the first millennium BCE, reads Yahweh's Asherah, who sits at his right hand, the throne of power reserved for the queen or queen mother, who grants sovereignty to the king. A translation of the earliest Hebrew version of Deuteronomy 33, 2-3 reads, Yahweh came from Sinai, yea, he came among the myriads of Kedishu. At his right hand his own Asherah. Indeed, he loves the clans and all his holy ones, Kedishu, on his left, which is very much emphasized. Now, for many years, the followers of the new Israelite religion continued to worship Asherah and other feminine divinities. Even fire and brimstone prophets initially accepted Asherah as the wife of Yahweh. King Solomon, Ahab, and others erected altars and statues to her in the central temples of Jerusalem and Samaria, where she was worshipped alongside of or instead of Yahweh. But in 586 BCE, when the nation of Israel was defeated and the first temple of Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonian Empire, the traumatized population looked for answers. The prophets shouted that it was the harlotry of the goddess worship that caused Israel's fall. The angry Yahweh was punishing the Israelites for worshiping the Queen of Heaven. From that point on, Hebrew Kiddushot were targeted and persecuted. Gradually, their temples and sanctuaries were destroyed. The last traces of public worship of the goddess ended in the time of the Hasmonean dynasty. With conversion forced at Sword Point in Galilee and other outlying provinces, sometimes around 160 BCE, even still, the Hebrew goddess did not disappear completely. By the time of Mary Magdalene and Jesus, she had gone underground, held in the mystical Kabbalist teachings and native Jewish folk magic, according to rabbinic tradition. The genius or spirit of idolatry, the impulse to worship the feminine divinity, was conceived of as a fiery lion that dwelled in the Adedim, the holy of holies of the Temple of Jerusalem, where God himself was supposed to live, and where she had to be locked up and guarded by the male priests. Now, here's a quote from Jeremiah 44, 17-19. We will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven and will pour out drink offerings to her, just as we and our ancestors, our kings and our officials did in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. The woman added, when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven and poured out drink offerings to her, did not our husbands know we were making cakes impressed with her image and pouring out drink offerings to her? Wow. So it's really cool that they actually created cakes with her image on it. If you've ever wondered, where does the birthday cake come from? It goes back to the ancient customs of the goddess. It's as round as the moon because the moon represents the divine feminine. So there's a lot that has been lost to humanity, but has survived in many ways. And if you think about it, the Bible, as holy and perfect and, beautiful as it is, it's definitely a patriarchal perspective. Very much so when you think about the fact that you hardly hear about the queens of ancient Israel. You mostly hear about the kings. And what's so interesting about this is that archaeological discoveries has shown God's wife, Asherah. And, it's been pretty much covered under the rocks, so to speak. For me, it never really changed much about my personal relationship with God. But it was nice to know, that God has a wife. And as controversial as that might seem to people, it's interesting because the Queen of Heaven is understood to be, let's say, from all of this evolved out of the ancient Israelites into Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And we can see traces of it. In the Talmud, they show you that the Ruach HaKodesh, which is the Holy Spirit, is a form of the divine feminine aspect of God, which is the Shekhinah. The Shekhinah is considered the Queen of Heaven. And then we also see that Miriam, Jesus' mother, is the embodiment of the Shekhinah, which would be the Queen of Heaven. So a lot of it has evolved, the terms, to the point where a lot of people don't realize the roots of where this is all coming from. And it's very interesting because we are living in the time period where a lot of people are earnestly seeking to understand the divine feminine and what it means for all of us. Anyway, I thought this was cool. If you'd like to know more, please feel free to comment. Let me know what your thoughts are, and talk to you guys later.